Welcome to the new media show. We're back.
Doing the new media show again.
People are actually going to listen to this junk.
We do it live.
We're live right now.
We'll just do it live.
We're going live. We're going live.
We just can't get enough. The new media show.
Let's go.
Just do it live.
We're going live. We're going live. Bada bing, bada boom.
The new media show. We do it live.
Just do it live.
We're going live. We're going live. We're going live.
The new media show. I'm like Adam Curry and you're more like John C. Dvorak.
I think I am Adam Curry and you're the old curmudgeon.
We do it live. Doing the new media show again.
The new media show.
Technology.
Whew. We make it sound so special. And here we are with the new media show. We're back and we are special, and we have a very special guest with us today. Of course. And,
yeah, we do.
And you know
Mr.
what?
Dan Franks is with us.
You spoiled it.
I know. He's right there, though, Todd. Right. If you're watching the video of this,
Dan Franks.
everybody knows who Dan. Talking about Mr. Danny Boy.
Dan Franks. We're talking about Dan Franks.
Yeah, baby.
I feel like that's
Wow.
the second time that one's run, right?
Right.
Yeah, exactly. We'll have to play that one again. I have it here programmed on my Roadcaster as well.
Yeah. So anyway, welcome, Dan. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me here. I was looking back, and I believe we've done this at least twice a year, every year since 2014.
Right.
Well, then we need to get like, I think Dave Jackson or somebody. No, it's not Dave. Somebody's got a shirt that's like if you appear 5 times on a show, it's like I've appeared 5 times on a certain podcast.
Right.
So.
Right. And
No,
all I
it's
got
fine.
was a T-shirt. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. No, I was trying to look back. I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but Podchaser has a way to, see how many times you've appeared on another show. So trying to see if maybe I have the record for the new media show appearances.
If I decide to keep this show on Podchaser, so we can talk about that in a minute. But hey, the new look we're in a 3-box today. I've got us all. We got Dan. We've got you in a sandwich. It's Rob and I on either side of you. So
Look out.
yeah, I could have had it stacked like a hamburger though. So, but today it's side by side. But
Happy to be part of the experiment. Yeah, and I don't know. I never know if what I'm looking at is a Todd thing or a Skype thing. This is like, the only time I use Skype is joining you all several times a year. So every time I get on here, it's a little bit different.
yeah, so what we're doing, you're still on Skype, but you're coming into a new thing here that we're doing that I'm trying, and hopefully don't crash the TriCaster again like we did last week. But anyway, we've got a pile of stuff to talk about, and first thing though, this is this new segment to the show. I have to give credit here. We got some boost. Do you guys know what a boost is? It's where we get boosted with Satoshi donations from Podcast 2.0 apps. And Rob, we cleaned up this week.
We did.
We
Wow.
did. We
Awesome.
got 1,001 sats from James Cridlem. He says, awesome to hear reading boost grams. Now go send some to Pod News and Podland. So I guess James wants some money too.
It's going the other way now, right?
Yeah.
Is there like a scoreboard tracking who's getting the most boosts?
Well, there is a thing called a heliopad, and I'll bring it up here. You guys can see it a little bit in the screen. Probably can't read it. It's probably too small. But there's a website that basically an app that tracks boost, and I'm running a box that allows me to run heliopad. Another one, we got like 10,000 sats from Adam Curry. He says, hey, we're both at PM and giving a talk. So right on task here. We got 50 sats from Messiah Podcast. It's basically from our last show, Same Old Story, RSS is hindering podcasting. We got 1,000 sats from Layman Creations. That's Andy Layman over there. He says, I'll add lit to my Podcast PowerPress add-on. So we've actually been talking with Andy this week, and so lit may be coming to the new media show very, very soon. We got, and for those of you who don't know what lit is, it's basically we can send out the bat single that says this show is live.
Right.
We got 10,000 sats from Mitch. He says, hey, regarding and I pronounce his name wrong every time, Mignano, or how do you pronounce his name? The guy from Anchor, the old CEO. Mignano. Yeah.
Right.
Regarding Mignano's standards innovation paradox, he says many glowing positive things about RSS, which I appreciate. The issue I have is he misidentifies the problem. Companies like Spotify are convinced a closed ecosystem they control is the most profitable direction for them, and RSS is inherently open, so they want to get rid of it. So let's call it what it is. It's not a standards innovation paradox. It's a competitive incentives problem. So I
Right.
kind of like that from Mitch. Mitch sent us another one. He said, hey guys, and this was another 10,000 sats. He says, hey guys, boosting from Podverse. Enjoyed your discussion about live item tag. Great to hear you're looking into making new media show lit. Fire sign. Please reach out if you have any questions I can answer from the app adoption side. So we've been having a conversation on the Podcast Index social Mastodon chat server. So, matter of fact, the discussion was pretty lively today, and so it's going back and forth. But everyone, thanks for the sats. I think that's maybe $3 or something like that, or $2. So whatever it is, we do thank you. But I wanted to, for those of you that are boosting via Podcast 2.0, we appreciate it. If you're not boosted yet, you can go over at Podcast Index, sign up over there, and listen to the podcast, our Podcast 2.0 podcast. That'll get you dialed in. And a lot of great discussions going on over there. But anyway, that's enough on the... I think we got a PayPal, too. We got a PayPal donation as well. So
Wow.
that
It's
came
rolling
in.
Todd, it's rolling in.
Yeah, it's a monthly. So we appreciate that monthly donation. And every little penny helps here. But we thank you very much. All right. So before we get into podcast movement, the IB Tech Labs today... And there's probably not enough time to go into this, but they have released a document that I and a number of other folks worked on quite a little bit in the fall. It's taken a time to get through review and crossing the I's and dotting the I's, crossing the T's. It's called the Platform Privacy Restrictions, Communicating Impacts and Strategies. If you are a podcaster, you must read this document.
Right.
It really goes into, and what prompted this was essentially when Apple last year introduced the ability to put users behind a VPN, and the impact that would have if Apple expands that. They haven't, so don't get crazy. If they expand that to all apps and basically allow people to be completely anonymous, hide behind, well, not hide, but essentially have a VPN for the global Apple.
It's obscure to everyone.
Well, it's very obscure. You're limited
Right.
to regions. Everyone, you'll show up whether in your LA basin or you show up if you're in Seattle, you'll show up if you're in Boston. And that'll be the end of it. There'll be like 8,000 people, 8 million people from Boston, 5 million from Seattle. You won't be able to really, well, be honest with you, it'll totally slam stats. The stats will not exist as we know it today. So there's a whole bunch of stuff, and it's not this is not the house is burning down message. This is not the purpose of this. This is to inform what happened, what could happen, the state we're in today, and really what we should do as a podcasting community to address listener privacy, and how ad platforms, if they don't change their ways, could be the high potential that it could be very, again, could be, no, we're not on fire, could be very disruptive to the entire podcasting space. A lot of work went in on this, a lot. 17 pages of commentary, and if you go through and read it, and again, I want everyone to read it. It addresses fraud. It talks about how IP is used today, how targeting is affecting. It's talking about why it matters, talking about privacy management. Again, all these things, and primarily what we're worried about. And this is just the piece I want to just read a portion of this real quick, and then we can move on. What we're worried about is the insight that podcasters derive from IP addresses helps them to minimize fraud, enable better user experience, improve compliance with regional regulations, and attract buyers. That means media buyers. That means people that want to support your show. That's a widespread. If frameworks like Apple's private relay were widely adopted as currently constructed, they would greatly harm revenue for podcasting businesses, which would lead to declining content creation. And then, again, it goes into some more stuff. And one of the sentences in here is a real point. When there's money to be made, there are bad actors inflating numbers, placing ads that create a bad user experience, creating distrust among buyers, looking to place their ads in a brand-safe environment. To address these issues, podcasters work with the IAB Tech Lab to create technical measurement standards. Standardized measures made the market more fair, improve trust among buyers, ultimately contribute additional growth. And the measurement standards that regulate data usage in quality podcast environments are relying on IP addresses. That's the key. That's really the statement, that the measurement standards that give us good data in podcast environments were truly tied to the hip by IP addresses, user agents, and geodata. So, again, I want you to read this, form your own opinion, and if you have a comment on this, they have developed a social hashtag, and I'm trying to find it. It's a hashtag concerned podcasters. IB wants you to share this. Again, but you need to read the document to understand the full context of everything we're here. We're not here to say, Apple, you're bad and you shouldn't do this. We're here to say this is why Apple's doing this in certain instances and why we need to be more proactive in protecting listener privacy as a podcasting space. And, a lot of us have been hammering this for a while. Boom, boom, boom. Listener privacy is a big deal. Our listeners do not have the ability to opt in and say, yes, it's okay to track me. And we're not saying Apple's going to do this. We're not saying others are going to do this, but if they do, it could be very, very bad. So they're trying to get ahead of it and be able to have a conversation with the industry and see what we can do to make sure that we are protecting the listener's privacy. That's a big piece of this. So anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, Todd, so is the goal of this, from your perspective, that this is kind of a proactive effort in keeping this from happening? So if good practices are practiced by the industry as a whole, that we may be able to avoid this crackdown? Is that what the bigger message is? Yeah,
it is. It's about education and about what the impacts will be, not only for people that monetize.
Right.
And a lot of this spoke, I tried to make sure that as the team was putting this draft together, I said, remember, there's a lot of podcasters that don't monetize, but they rely on data to help grow their show. They rely on data to make decisions about how much they're going to spend. There's a whole bunch, it's just not about the money. And oftentimes, a lot of people that were involved with this is involved in the money piece. But, we tried to make sure there was messaging in here that made average podcasters understand that they're going to be impacted as well. And again, we didn't want this document to be this big reactionary, like pointing fingers at somebody. That was not the case. And I think when Apple and others read this, which I know they will, I think hopefully that tone comes across, that the hashtag concerned podcaster is what it is. We're concerned. And again, there's nothing right now happening. There's no indication that Apple's going to make a move, or Google or anybody else, but it goes into the why and what would happen if someone did, and not specifically Apple, but if someone did, what could happen and what the impact would be.
Yeah, and what we can do as a broader industry to maybe address these without these drastic measures being taken. Right.
There was a lot of work put in this. I would say my personal contribution was probably 20 hours. There was a number of other folks that were on this as well that wrote certain sections and made suggestions. And then the publisher of this, Katie, she did the groundwork on working all the language in and all our suggestions, and then there was sign off by a whole bunch of people in the space. So the sign off in this document included, just call the companies Raw Voice, Captivate, Extreme Reach, NPR, Libsyn, Spreaker, Kantar Sifo, Sounds Profitable, ACPM, Disney, Podcast One, ABC UK, Audion, Podtrack, Double Verify, Acast, Empire Streaming. So there was sign off by a lot of the folks that are involved in measurement and monetization and all that stuff. So this was a collective effort to put the word out.
Yeah, and I also noticed in this report as well that the IAB, through what PricewaterhouseCooper is putting out numbers around the market podcast revenue forecasts, and it's showing that in 2023 they're predicting 2.188 billion in advertising revenue in 2023. So that's interesting. That's up from 1.755 billion in 2022. So it's showing significant growth. I didn't know that we were pushing 2 billion in 2022.
Yeah, and again, I think some of this stuff was I don't know when these reports were pulled.
Yeah, exactly.
But this document has been in work for a while. I'll say at least 6 months. So,
and some of these numbers were probably put together before we started to fall into a recession.
Yeah, potentially.
Too, so,
yeah.
Right.
But I think it's a good read for everyone. If nothing else, you guys can criticize or make your own comments and your own conclusions. But this was a collective effort to try to get ahead of things that could potentially come down the road. So, and again, it's not doom or gloom. The sky is not falling, so that's the main thing I want people to walk away with.
Yeah, and, it also shows... Yeah, and it also shows in another chart the distribution of the type of technology that's used to deliver advertising in podcasts too. I thought that was interesting. It looks like that the dynamic inserted ads is growing significantly, and the baked-in ads is in a state of decline. So I don't know how accurate that is to the current dynamic in the market, but that's an interesting, look at what's happening in the market right now.
So while we got Dan on here, before we get into the other topic at hand, let's because I know what all of you are here for. I know you want to hear what we think about a certain acquisition. You're going to have to wait a few minutes.
Right. I think the sandwich on the screen and the sandwich between topics, right?
Right. Exactly.
So Dan, you busy? Podcast Movement's coming.
Yeah, we've got 5 weeks from yesterday until the first day of Podcast Movement kicks off, the 23rd of August. And busy, excited, and just like the freight train headed to August 23rd right now.
I was having a meeting with my PR team today, and I'm like, I got 4 announcements to make between now and Podcast Movement. I'm like laying everything out. I said, and I told my dev team, I says, we have to deliver the last thing no later than the 17th, because I got to make the PR window before Podcast Movement. And my CTO, she's just like, she didn't say you're killing me, but we're marching towards your event. So you can be happy to know you're driving dev cycles.
Yeah, dev cycles and PR cycles for sure. I mean, it's an honor, I would say, right? Because like I said, when I first joined you all back in 2014, and it was like February 2014 when we first started talking about when we had a Kickstarter campaign that hadn't even launched yet to bring Podcast Movement into existence. I was telling someone on my team when I was talking to them that I was joining you all today. I was like, I looked back and saw the exact date. I said, I don't want to listen to that because you don't want to, look at pictures when you were of yourself when you were in your awkward stage. And I kind of felt like that's what that was. But I was like, if you want to really know the history of Podcast Movement, the evolution and all of that, just go back and listen progressively each time I was on the show, and you'd kind of hear that evolution. But it's real cool to kind of know that people base meetings and announcements and development and all that around the event. It's really really cool and really kind of a humbling thing.
And I think part of it too is that you got to hear our criticism as well, and our comments, and our feedback. And I guess it wasn't criticism; it was more feedback. So I think that's what's important too about having had you on a number of times talking about prior events and past future events and so forth. So you've got a big lineup, and I always have to ask this question: how is the registrations going?
It's going well. An interesting kind of change in dynamic has happened, obviously, with COVID and everything, but live events have specifically been affected. Not just like, okay, people are now excited to get back into events, or people are now pulling back from events, but more like that pacing of when they register and when they decide to come. And we've seen that, especially our event in March, which was our most recent event, that so many registrations happened at the very last minute. But then for Nashville, which was last podcast movement last August, a lot of that happened way before, and then it kind of tapered off, and we had a new variant and all that kind of killed it. So like every event now, we're seeing different pacing and different registrations. So we don't really know what the last 5 weeks are going to look like from a registration standpoint. Whereas from 2014 to call it early 2020, we kind of had the line chart where we could see when things went up, when they went down, when they went up, and whether, the numbers changed, but the pacing really didn't. That, kind of, we could count on it. Okay, here's where we're at on this date. We kind of know where we're going to be 2 or 3 months from now, and now it's just all out the window. So right now, our things are going really well. We're happy where they're at. We're expecting it to continue to pick up, but we don't know if it's going to pick up.
Sure.
Like it did in March, or if it's going to. So yeah, we'll all kind of learn together, and I'm not sure if this year will be that new normal, or if it's going to be another year before we can figure out that new normal. So it's an interesting time, we'll say. Still, like we mentioned the last few times we talked, still an interesting time to be in live events.
The pacing is an interesting topic because I see the same thing with the podcast awards. I see the pacing on registration, and then I know what happens 10 or 15 days after we start, where that goes. And then of course the last 15 days, because if you're not registered by now, it's almost too late. So we know that it dives off. But it is interesting how you see the pacing go. And if you don't know where your pacing's at, that makes you nervous as heck. I just, you don't know if you're planning for 2,000 or if you're planning for 3,000. It's one of those things.
Yeah, and that's probably our window, and that's a big window. But floor and not necessarily ceiling, but last August we were right about 2,000, which was the first year back after taking a full year off. 2 years before that, when we were in Orlando for the last what we'll call normal event, that was right around 3,000. So our first year back was about 2/3 of that, and we'll be somewhere in that window. I hope we. I actually think when we talked, I don't remember how far out from Evolutions we spoke before our March event this year, but we were pacing really poorly. Like we were nervous. We were like, okay, are we even going to have as many people at this 2022 event as we did the last time we did it in 2020? And it was kind of iffy. And then as the event got closer, it just blew it out of the water, and we blew our expectations of registrations, out of the water. So like I said, it's just really hard, but yeah, that window you described is probably where it'll be, and likely pushing that closer to that 3,000 for sure. But again, we'll know when we get there.
I told my team I'd be happy if you had 2.
Yeah, we will. With that, yeah, like I said, that's the floor, and but probably way low of a floor. But
but it's what's funny is I did an interview with a gal the other day, and I said, "Are you coming to Podcast Movement?" She said, "What's that?" And I'm like, "Oh."
We have that conversation every year, though, right? Like,
and I'm like, I said, "You haven't heard about?" And so I think what there is really, I don't know how to fix that for you. You guys will have to look at it. But I was like, how do you not know about this event? It's the premier event of the year, one of 2, but it's it's the big creator event. I'm like, are you like, where are you getting your information? And a lot of podcasters just don't tune into any Facebook groups or nothing. They're just doing their thing.
Right.
Yeah, and
there's a lot of new people in the podcasting space now, more so than I think in all time. So
yeah,
it's.
But I mean, we do talk about that every time we get on here, because there's always that anecdotal stories, and I've started running some local meetups here in Dallas, and same thing. And it's like, wait, this is where we're based. It's, I would say, somewhat embarrassing, but not really, because it's just
it's
a weird dilemma and a weird kind of quirk with podcasters.
Yeah.
is that everybody hangs out in different places. Like we have our hardcore people who are in the Facebook groups and who we're able to kind of interact with. But really for us, it's just, okay, how many different points of entry can we get into this, flywheel or this marketing funnel or whatever you want to call it. So, okay, we've got several newsletters, one that's geared towards industry people. So we kind of get them in that way. And we have referral programs, and we run a ton of search ads, and we run a ton of display ads, and on Facebook and on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok even. So we've got ads everywhere. So it's really, how many different places can we be there? What kind of targeting can we do to those people? Yes, the whole concept of retargeting people that are already in our sphere of influence to try to convert them into paying customers. But then also it's, how do we expand that and reach those people like you just described, who are podcasters and are paying for products and services, but for whatever reason, the idea of a podcast event doesn't even dawn on them to look for it, because I'd like to think if they're looking for it, they can find us. Yeah. But if they don't know to look for it, but they might like it if they knew it existed, those are the people that's really, really kind of the target.
I guess the only thing that's made me nervous is the airfare is crazy right now. And with the economy, in flux and all that other stuff, I thought that might impact a little bit. But
good, yeah.
We'll see. I guess, you'll be the judge of how, of where it comes in. But, I'm bringing 4 people. We're prepping. We're planning to be there in force. So it's, I'm excited. I'm excited. It's almost like class reunion time.
Yeah. And, the airfare has gone down a little bit, kind of like gas. And I don't know if it's all kind of pacing the same way, but we've had people that 6 weeks ago bought their airfare and was like, it's really expensive. And now they looked at it and they're like, actually, it's cheaper now than it was then. Which usually, awesome. As you get closer to the event, it would be the other way around. But yeah, I mean, recession and inflation and all those things, it's all gonna go into it.
Yep.
Where COVID's at 5 weeks from now versus where it is now, that could cause things good or bad depending on how things progress. So yeah, lots of factors in play that we haven't necessarily dealt with as a combined effect.
What Rob? I'm sure you want to jump in here. So sorry, I'm hogging the mic. I've been seeing your announcements on all the speakers and everything that's going on. So it looks like the lineup is pretty good. How many submissions do you guys get this year? It's like was same 600, 700, 800.
Yeah, I think it was right around just over 600, and then a lot of backup submissions come through of people who missed deadlines or just kind of got their ducks in a row. So yeah, definitely over 600. Yeah, it's like I say every time, it's the least fun process, whittling 600 submissions down to 60 or 70 that we accept out of those. But also to me and our whole team, one of the most necessary things we go through every year, just because we've been to events where they kind of curate their own sessions and speakers each year, and it's the same people and the same topics, and it gets stale and they don't have new ideas. Whereas if we open it up to other people, it's not up to us to decide necessarily like what's important. It's okay, if we see a bunch of submissions on this topic, then obviously that's something that people want to talk about and more likely in return want to learn about and want to hear about. Same thing in terms of getting a diverse set of speakers from different networks and different countries and different, you name it.
Right.
A lot of those things are people that we don't know or we wouldn't think to reach out to. We wouldn't think that, this subset of Spanish podcasters from NPR would be interested in leading a session. But when they come to us, it's like, okay, they're kind of have that ability to raise their hand. So like, there's a lot of that going on that makes it, again, I say a necessary evil to have that open submission process each year. And yeah, this year we're super excited about the lineup. We're coming back with a full set of live sessions, which Nashville was a little bit hybrid, just out of necessity. But yeah, this year is going to be back to what anyone who's come to 2019 or prior would come to expect, with choose your own adventure of 7 or 8 or 9 stages happening at any given time, and you kind of pick what you want to learn about at the event, or which one of those 9 sessions is most applicable to you as an attendee at that given hour, and then go and hopefully learn and network and mix and mingle and party in between.
And if one isn't very good, get right up and go to another one. Have a backup ready.
Right. That's right. Yeah, and the 45-minute session. So if the first 5 minutes you decide to bounce, it's a super easy to navigate floor plan, and everything's a little more compact than it was in Nashville, where there was different levels and stuff. This time it's 2 levels. They're stacked, 1 escalator right in the middle that goes directly up and down. And yeah, 5 or 10 minutes into a session, if you don't like it, you have another 40 or so minutes to to pick a new one that you like better.
So do you think that the event this year will be probably a little bit stronger of a community building event from the standpoint of the weather in Texas being so hot and people might stay in the hotel more? Does the hotel have all of the venue and the restaurants and the resources for people to just spend the whole time that they're at Podcast Movement all in that same venue? Just curious.
Yeah, it's a combination of things. For sure, the venue has. It's not a Gaylord property, although we're back at Gaylord properties the next 2 years after this year. So it's not necessarily like you've got all these different atriums and stuff, but it's more compact in a way that most people will be hanging out in the same vicinity. So from that standpoint, I think it's good. Definitely several bars and several like seating areas, and Sheraton, I guess during some rebrand they've done several years ago, they put in a lot of like community tables and just places to sit and work and visit and network, for lack of a better term. So it's a good setup there. And then Nashville was like a party town, right? Like there's people wanted to go out and see downtown Nashville and party there on weeknights. And for better or worse, Dallas doesn't quite have that reputation. So I think that kind of thing will keep people like, okay, well, let's do what we're in town for, and that's hang out with the people that are here at the event. So definitely,
I'd like to see more of the community stay together and not run off. And I mean, that's one disadvantage of like going to Las Vegas or something.
Sure.
Is that there's so many other things to do outside of the hotel. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, for sure, the venue will be conducive to that. The city will be conducive to that. You mentioned the heat. I think it's like 110 degrees today. So, people won't want to hopefully spend too much time. They'll maybe take an Uber or a taxi or something if they need to get around. And downtown Dallas, which is where it is, it's not the most walkable city, but also not the least. It's just a regular downtown where people will be able to walk off for lunch if they want to, within a 5-minute walk, get somewhere. But also, venues inside, and then off-site parties are, very close walking distance, or we'll have buses. So hopefully the heat isn't too much of a factor. We've definitely put out the edict, no outdoor parties this year.
Having spent a considerable amount of time in Texas in June, July, August, September, and even into October, I'm staying in a hotel. I'm not. and if we
put on the marketing materials that the AC is super strong at the venue,
right? Are you?
It has
calling them to make sure that their AC is working.
Yeah, sticking our head in once a week to make sure nothing's
right.
If people have not experienced Texas heat, stand by.
Yeah, and the UK right now too. Like if you're coming over from the UK, you're not going to get any
relief.
Any relief? No. Well, and doesn't Texas have an issue a little bit with like rolling blackouts and stuff occasionally, or is that?
So it's not as bad as California. So the only time we've had that issue on a large scale was actually in the winter, believe it or not, because we froze over for a week or so. So we get it from both ends from that standpoint. But yeah, in the summer we've had the electric company asking us to conserve energy, but so far they've not turned off anyone's lights as far as I know.
Well, knock on wood, because that would be a bad thing in a big way. And usually the hotels have backup generators that can help supplement too if things really go sideways. But usually that's not the best case scenario. So, one thing that I will say about the Nashville event, we about damn near starved because it was right after the pandemic and they just didn't have the staff. How are they doing on staffing in the hotel? Are they going to be fully booked up and ready for the surge?
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. That's the plan. Of course, in Nashville, they told us that too. But hopefully being a little further removed from that. And also, I said Dallas isn't like the most vibrant downtown, but at the Opryland, that's where you were. Like,
you're stuck.
Drive 20 minutes or something to get to any real, substantial restaurant. So from that sense, on site as well as within short distance to get to, all of that should be open and functioning. So yeah, that's the plan, is to not have anyone starve for sure.
We didn't starve, but you had to wait a little longer in the queue to get into some place.
And they would have to shut down several bars earlier than they normally would. So I think at least from that standpoint, we're past some of that here.
Yeah. And the last couple of podcast movements, there hasn't been such a congregation at the bar afterwards because I think a lot of people went off and done things. And
Right.
so it'll be interesting to see how that kind of develops at this event. It's always good to kind of network and hang out. But
Yeah. I think in March, if I remember correctly, there was a the bar there at the
yeah,
JW.
it was decent.
That
Yeah.
was pretty
Yeah.
central. But again, LA, in that LA live area, there's tons to go out and do. So I think that definitely had people spreading out a little bit more.
But it was also that event, that venue was fantastic because there was really the ability just to go almost anywhere and get anything you wanted quickly. And I went over. Was it you and I, Rob, that went to the Indian restaurant, or we went?
Yeah.
5 minutes and we had Indian food. And we got right in and sat down. It was not at all slammed. So I'm sure downtown Dallas is going to be kind of similar. So probably be lots of options there.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll communicate that and have little maps and all that for people to figure out where to go eat.
So
Well, Dan,
go ahead, Rob.
let's talk about the kind of tracks and what you are planning for the event this year. Is there anything new or different that you've adjusted from Nashville to this event?
Yeah, so Nashville. Well, one of the things we like best, and you all are both heavy participants in this, is our expo hall, and this is going to be the year we have the most exhibitors ever. So we'll be, I think, over 80 exhibitors, and I want to say like Orlando was maybe our next biggest, and that was like in the 60, 65 range, I believe. So a pretty good, vibrant expo hall. Nashville, we were pacing towards that until people started, dropping off, and sales slowed down whenever the Delta variant started. So that's something I'm super excited about, is really kind of the vision for what we want our expo hall to be, in a place that like people can come in and adventure around and spend a good amount of time there. That's something I'm super excited about. On the programming side of things, we're kind of, again, picking up our vision of having our 6 distinct primary tracks of education. So we've got our industry track, our technical track, our creation track, monetization, marketing, and then our society, culture, and advocacy track. So those are our 6 primary tracks that most of the sessions fit onto one of those tracks, which each have a dedicated stage. So an equal number of sessions across each of those throughout the 3 days. And then we've also got one stage, which we're calling internally like our Rotator Stage. But that's kind of the more niche, specific type things, where it's got an audio fiction day, like a branded podcast and type day, and then a Spanish language podcast type day. So that's one where we're, I don't know what you call like an emerging markets track or an emerging, topic track. And then this year is the first year where we've actually sold to sponsors a separate stage where they could more or less buy a day to program however they want. And it's interesting that, when you do something like that, the content could go one of 2 ways. It could go, full day of infomercials, or it could be that, those sponsors kind of take advantage of the opportunity and actually make really good sessions that people want to go to, and then it reflects well on them. So this year we're doing that, and Descript, who's coming out with all kinds of advancements and stuff, they're doing a video podcasting track. So all 5 sessions that day are on video podcasting. Quill, who's really into the branded podcast space, they've got a full day. And then Red Circle has a day geared more towards independent podcasters. So a lot of their sessions are going to kind of be themed towards DIY independent podcasters versus maybe people doing it on a more professional or big scale level. So that's something new we've got going on. We've got a couple stages in the expo hall like we normally do, just to kind of keep things happening there. But yeah, like I said, this is kind of our, I hate to say getting things back on track, but just from like, hey, let's be where we want to be, and then we can, start the evolution again next year once we kind of reestablish what our event is.
Well, I'm jazzed, and I've got a massive travel for 2 weeks. Leave your place. I go to Vegas for an event, went from one hot box to another, and then down to Atlanta and Sweat for a few days as well. So I guess get ready for the heat and get ready for the fire hose of information that's going to be fed to us. So it's going to be good.
Yeah, for sure. But no, like we're excited. We've got most of our keynote speakers announced, got a few more coming. So this year, just the way organically it's happened is we end up the bookending it with like true crime type speakers. So Phoebe Judge, who was been a breakout speaker several times. Her podcast is Criminal, really big, kind of one of the longer. I think it actually even came out before Serial, but one of the true crime shows that was kind of there before, during, and after, and has continued to thrive. Kind of having a check-in on what true crime, the evolution of true crime podcast with her. Lacey Mosley is the host of the Scam Goddess podcast, which is a really popular one right now. So she's doing something on Friday. She's actually a Dallas native, so it'll be cool to kind of have a little bit of tie-in there. And then Edison Research, Tom Webster left, who traditionally has given Edison Research's keynote. But Gabriel Soto, who has been there for a while, and he's picking it up. So this is his debut for Edison Research's keynote. And then our final keynote would be Friday morning as well, and that one we haven't announced yet. We're still working on that one. So that's kind of what we've got going on there on the main stage. And then new media show live on Friday, and all kinds of stuff happening in between.
Have you ever heard of Robert Riggs, the guy that does the True Crime Reporter? He's there in Texas.
And he's going to be there, yeah.
Yeah, so he's a great dude. He's a great storyteller. So if you get a chance to talk to Robert, he's right there in the Dallas area too. So
yeah, definitely look into that session. he was a television personality here in town. So
is he doing a session?
He is doing a session.
Oh, awesome.
He's doing a session. So we've got our 2 expo hall stages. One is called the Solution Stage, which is like some more hands-on, like demonstration, not necessarily product demonstrations, but like hands-on editing or that kind of thing. And then we've got our startup stage, which is kind of comprised of startup companies that are doing innovative things in the space, startup networks who are talking about, their evolution as a startup from, kind of bootstrap type approach to things. And I believe his is on that track as well, on that startup stage, because he kind of took a background in not podcasting and has built something really, really cool. And like I said, I remember seeing him on television here locally, and it's an interesting thing that this is the first year I've noticed it being local, is that we've got a bunch of people who have been in the local media scene, whether it's radio personalities or TV personalities, that are now becoming somewhat prominent podcasters. Like Robert is a perfect example of that. So starting to see that evolution in kind of a personal way as well.
Yeah, he's got an amazing story, and then he's had an exclusive show on Fox Nation. I think they paid for a series over there, so yeah, I'm sure his session is going to be good. I think there's going to be such a wide range of good stuff. I think that virtual track pass where people can get access to the sessions afterwards is going to be key. And there was someone in the chat room that said, "Hey, we want to see the live new media show with Adam and who we're going to have on." And I think that one's actually, is that free, or is that on
we should be able to stream that. I think that's what we've traditionally done.
Yeah, so I think you're going to be able to get that free, Martin. So, but for someone that can't go, to be honest with you, what does that virtual pass cost to get the access to the library of content after the show?
Yeah. So,
or is there any live components that are available in that virtual pass too? Right.
Yeah, good question for sure. So we've got 3 different ways to get access to the virtual pass. So the middle and top tier of our in-person tickets also include the virtual pass, which is what you talked about, Todd. It's the recordings of every session. So it's like 150 hours of video on the back end of the event for you to pick and choose, and we try to present it in an organized way so you can people can dive into the sessions they want to see. But then you've got our virtual only pass, which should go on sale next week, I believe, right about a month before the event. And that's all of those recordings, just like I mentioned. And then also it is 4 of those track stages that I mentioned, kind of our 4 what we consider our more popular tracks. Those 4 will be live streaming throughout the event as well. So you buy that virtual pass, you can spend 3 days watching sessions, kind of morning, noon, and night, and then get all the recordings on the back end. So I'm not sure. This might be the last event that we do live stream, just because when we did it in March for the Evolutions event, and the pickup wasn't that great. We had a bunch of people that bought the virtual ticket, but they just bought it for the recordings.
Right.
So being candid, spending $30,000 for 50 or 100 people to live stream something, it's hard to justify that.
Yeah, that's easy math. That's ouch. Yeah.
Yeah. So this might be the last year we do live stream, and might go back to just on demand only. And really, it's hard to recreate that in-person experience live anyways. So if people just see the value in the on-demand versus the live, then that's probably what it'll revert back to after this year.
What I do, because I'm stuck in the booth half the time, is I go through and every day I try to catch 1 or 2 sessions, and then whatever I can't, I make a mark in the book on the sessions that I wanted to go to, but I just couldn't. And then when you guys release the virtual pass, then I go back and listen to those 20 or 25 sessions that I wanted to hear that there was just no way to attend. And for me, the value on that is like, man, that, even though I was there, I couldn't go and listen to those folks. Now, if you're there, you might not have as many that you want to follow up on, but still the ability to go back and have that fire hose of data, because what I continue to find is that even though, okay, let's just be frank, old dogs can be taught new tricks. All right, because
it's rare, Todd.
No, it's not rare. It's not rare because there's lots of people doing exciting stuff in this space, and you'll be hearing something like, huh? You do one of those, your head will turn, and you'll stop and you'll replay something 5 times because you're like, did I hear what she or he said? And you go back and you listen to that again. And it's like I keep a notebook opened up and I write, and I end up with like half a page every time I'm listening to those shows of just, oh, that's interesting, that's cool, let me adopt that, or let me look into this, or that's interesting what this person's doing, because there's such a diversity of creators and a diversity of things they're doing to grow, to monetize, it runs the gamut. So I think most people do, I don't know what you guys see on stats on that playback, but that's the gem. That's the gem of the whole event, is going back and being able to cherry pick through that stuff and listen to stuff that you weren't able to attend.
Yeah, because I think the value of going to an in-person event is the interpersonal networking that actually happens at that event. And if people, I know this is something that I wrestle with too, is I would probably rather spend time talking to people in the hallway than in the sessions, because I know that I can go watch all that stuff
later
after the event. So I guess it's really a matter of getting the most value out of while you're there with other people that have a common interest that you have, and connecting with them and doing deals. And I know a lot of companies like ours and yours, Todd, make a lot of connections with new networks and new podcasters, and that's invaluable, and that's the number one reason to go.
Yeah,
I think.
And I think too is the tangible. For sure, the stuff in the hallways is the most valuable for me, and at the booth. But the ability, sometimes there's something that I like. Maybe I've got an issue with something, and I'll go listen to a session maybe by the person giving so I want to hear from that person, and I want to ask a question, not in adversarial ways, but I just truly want to know.
Or meet them after their presentation too.
Yeah, and then have a conversation, and so this is the kind of stuff I get really out of the event, and that's why it's from morning till night. That's why we go hard, go hard or go home.
Yeah, and it is interesting. You mentioned, kind of the go there for the networking and the connection, and then catch the replays or catch the recordings. It's funny when we're telling somebody new about the event, like you said, these people we mentioned who maybe they're just getting introduced to the idea of a podcasting event or why it might be good for them. The education is always what kind of hooks them. Oh yeah, I do want to learn about how to grow my show, or I do want to learn how to do this or that. But then when they come away from it after their first time, that's like secondary, right? It is connections. It's the people they meet. It's whether it's vendors that they're working with already and they have questions for them, and there's nothing like sitting down with somebody from the tech support team, like in person, to walk through your issue, or it's a new microphone you want to check out, or anything like that. Or just meeting new people at the parties or at the networking events, or just walking through the hallways. That's where the value ends up coming from. But to get them in the door, it's the education. So it's a 1-2 punch, and there's value in both. And definitely having those recordings help. And actually, something new we're doing this year is this is the first time we've we're going to release everything in audio form. So we're working with Supporting Cast to put together basically private feeds for all the tracks, as well as a master feed of all the sessions, and putting out the audio of every single session to anyone who has a virtual ticket. We did it 1 year, but it was on more of a closed platform. It wasn't RSS based, but this will be RSS based, so people will be able to subscribe to, the Podcast Movement 2022 feed, or pick an individual track and just listen on their podcast app. So something that's probably long overdue, but it's just not something we've done until this year.
Well, it's a podcasting conference. Imagine that.
Yeah, so would that
anyone who
be
gets the videos
on like a private subscription-based audio delivery platform. Is that the idea?
Exactly. So anyone that's familiar with how a Patreon, individual link works, a Supporting Cast, Supercast, there's a bunch of them out there. Glow, I believe, kind of that's that product is. So it's that thing, and this time it's Supporting Cast who's helping us put that together.
Got it.
Super excited.
So I'm. I think one thing I was going to talk to you about, and it's not a positive. It's not about your event, but an event I went to recently. We'll just leave it at that. Real hard to not figure out what that is. I just was overwhelmed by the number of sessions, and I know you guys have strict rules on this. The number of sessions I was getting pitched at was over the top. How have you guys got that in check over the years? Because I know you have in the speakers agreement, you have very strict rules on pitching. It's one they say, hey, I'm Todd from Blueberry Podcasting. That's one thing, but to give this whole, dialogue of come use my service or product, at the event I went to recently, it was over the top, and I actually heard a attendee say she's not coming back the second day because all she was getting pitched to. And to me, I was like, my God, you just spent all this money and you're walking away with this bad taste in your mouth. And for those that are considering going, what have you guys done to make sure that, that doesn't happen, or it's very limited?
Yes. It's definitely a multi-pronged approach. First of all, the way we take our sessions, like I mentioned, it's that open submission process. We don't have any sort of, okay, if you buy a booth, you get a session.
Right.
Or if you sponsor a party, you get 2 sessions, or anything like that. Mm-hmm. Now, you'll notice that people who are sponsors also happen to be speaking, and that's because many of the important players in the podcast space also are partners from that standpoint. But, I can tell you that somebody who produces a Spanish podcast for, NPR, if NPR were a sponsor, they wouldn't be able to tell them, like, hey, you need to pitch the X, Y, and Z. Like, these companies are big enough to where there's a lot of separation from sales and who's actually presenting. But that's the first approach, is like we are very flat out in the sales process. When Christy, who does our sales, is talking to people, anyone who asked about a session, it's not a pay to play.
Right.
So
no guarantee.
I just mentioned those sponsored tracks we're doing. We are having ways now where we can very clearly communicate, hey, this is a sponsored session, going in. We have not taken away any of the unsponsored session. Right. It's just additive. So that's the first thing, is like we just make it clear it's not pay to play, and that heads off a lot of it. But then, I mentioned we have that open submission process, but we do have a lot of repeat speakers, people who we know, they know how it works. They've come in, they've spoken before, and they kind of understand what kind of audience it is. We try to prep people. We're like, hey, the best way for your product or service to be to benefit from you doing a session is for you to really do a good session. And then, like you said, you introduce yourself, from what company you're from. People know how to get hold of you after, because you're telling them, hey, here's my email address or our website, or stop by, stick around and we'll talk after the session. But if that meat of the session is super valuable, that'll make people want to talk to you and find out more, versus the person you just described from another event.
I often find people
exact opposite.
I often find people are shocked when I talk about competitors. They're like, you talked about competitors during it. I'm like, yeah, I'm not here to pitch. I'm here to tell you what your options are.
Yeah. But and that's not to say things don't slip through.
Right.
But it's very much, I would say, it's that things will slip through, and we figure out how that happened and try to keep it from happening again, versus setting up a system that kind of allows it or accepts it. I won't say who, but you mentioned a name earlier in the show who is probably one of the worst offenders to that slipping through the cracks that we've ever had, in terms of telling us they were going to talk about one thing and they spoke about another that ended up being a really big sales pitch. And it upset us because we feel like we have systems in place. So when things slip through, we take it personally.
Right.
We figure out how it happened and we address it. So, anytime anyone.
And you heard about it immediately.
We hear about it immediately. And we, figure out, okay, is this somebody that we need or want to work with again? If so, okay, how do we change things in the future? Or is it somebody that, they're on the blacklist now and we just, address it that way?
Yeah, and part of this is coming from, I think, in the industry, kind of a movement now where more and more kind of upstart events, these are newer events, are taking this pay-to-play model and going with it, right? Where you basically, paid a sponsor, but with that sponsorship, you get a presentation or you get on stage. And I think that we're definitely seeing an upsurge in that type of activity. And I don't know if it's just pure economics or if, which is probably what it really is. But I think that's where this is coming from to some degree, is some concern that isn't a momentum that's going across the whole events space, right?
Well,
I think some shows like yours draws those lines, right?
Yeah, it's hard because, when we started our event, our first 3 or 4 years of running it, everyone involved, it was a side gig. It was not our income. So we had a chance to build it what I would consider the right way. We didn't need to do it like that. And we saw the long-term vision and to not do that kind of thing. But if it's somebody who's starting it because like, hey, needs to be my business now, you can certainly see why that kind of approach might be like the quickest way to turn a profit, so to speak. The other thing is there's a bunch of events in the marketing industry that's what the events are.
That's all it is.
That's accepted. Like people will pay $2,000 for a ticket knowing that all of these speakers are going to either pitch as their presentation or pitch at the end of their presentation and likely have a table, in the lobby to sell you that product or service on your way out, have somebody running credit cards. And that's accepted in certain circles. So if a podcaster were to come through that type of entry into the podcasting space or the event space, they might think, hey, this is just how you do it. It's not, in my opinion, but there's different ways that you get to that. That's not always, not always evil, but the end result isn't necessarily what I think is right.
And I get pitched as a company owner all the time for those types of events, and first thing I ask for is, okay, let's see your deck. And when a deck immediately says, $8,000 and you get one speaking slot, we throw it in the trash. We don't even consider it. It's not even an event we're going to go to because I refuse to do pay to play. And like we've talked about in the previous show, I feel honored if I'm selected to speak, and I understand that I'm being given an opportunity to bring value to a potential creator that is looking for information on the topic I'm in. So I take that very seriously. And I know Rob does the same. And we know it's not a given. We know that we're in a pool of 600 different sessions, and I'm fully expecting there'll be a time when I'll submit a session to you or someone else. I won't be picked. I won't feel bad. It's just it wasn't the session that was needed at that time, and right place, wrong time, or wrong place, right time, or whatever the word is. I'm not going to take it personal. It's one of those. It's just. I think we all understand that, especially with your event. So, I applaud you from that standpoint.
I mean, I don't even consider pitching as even an option. I mean, even if I was pitched a conference that had a pay-for-play model, that doesn't mean I'm going to get up on stage and pitch my company.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to still try and drive value, but the problem with all that is that not everybody else has those values, right? So you're going to be associated with that type of an event, and that can damage your brand as well. So I think that's kind of a bigger perspective on it.
So have we covered everything that's going on with the event? Did we miss anything?
No, I think we have it. If anyone's interested in learning about it, we've got pretty much the full schedule live at 2022.podcastmovement.com. Most of the speakers are up there. A few stragglers that we have to get to sign those speaking agreements before we can start promoting them. So if you're one of those people, definitely complete your agreement. But yeah, just super excited. And like I said, excited to be back to what our vision of the event is this year, and hope to have as many people out there as possible.
Yeah, and we're honored to be doing this show live on
Yep.
stage at the event again. It's going to be awesome to have Mr. Adam Curry on stage and James Cridlin and other folks. And I know there's quite a few people in the industry that are excited to that all of us are getting together on stage with Adam because he is the Podfather, right?
It's great to have Adam
So-
there, right? Like it's been it's been. I think the last time he was on stage was at the Hall of Fame ceremony in 2015.
Yeah.
Yep.
So excited to have him back, and he's, I believe, still Austin based, right? So
He's Hill Country, so
Yeah.
he's a couple hours out of Boston.
yeah.
But-
So
I think
that
he
was
and-
super exciting.
Yeah, I think he and his partner Dave are doing a session on Podcast 2.0 earlier too.
Relevant to
So
what you were talking
yeah.
about, Todd.
Yeah. So I think from that perspective, I'm excited to have Adam on the stage too. So I think Adam can be pretty raw.
Yeah,
So,
he can
if there's a bleep that needs to be made, probably there might, I know
Kinda-
no one gets bleep, but there might be a few bleep opportunities with,
brutally honest is probably
Brutally
the other way of
honest.
describing it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think
Yeah.
we've had to consider a bleep button or anything except when Kevin Smith in 2016
yeah.
in Chicago, he had some words to say, but other than that, we've not had too many complaints.
so I think that I tell you what, probably my new favorite show, and it's just because I'm a nerd, is definitely that Podcast 2.0 show. Adam, I think I like it better than No Agenda, but it's it's a pretty close even. So it's pretty unusual to have two shows by the almost one of the same host that is on my top list. But I'm making me think a lot. I've been listening to it in the car, and I'm just like, So I think Adam's going to bring a lot to the event, and I think if you get a chance and you haven't met Adam Curry, if you're going, please go up and say hello and thank him for for what he did to get this space off the ground, and also thank him for what he's doing with Podcast 2.0.
Yeah, because here most recently with the controversy around innovation with RSS, Adam has definitely been taking that issue to heart for many years now, and trying to push forward change and improvement to the medium, and it's a little disheartening sometimes to hear a certain section of the industry kind of say that that's not going on when it actually is going on.
Well, he has
So-
some very interesting comments about that in episode 903, Podcast
Yep.
2.0. You can't find it on Apple Podcasts. You have to subscribe to the RSS
Yep.
feed. So let's talk a little bit. Of course, everyone knew this was coming. Let's talk just a little bit about the acquisition of a company. Let's talk about what has happened with Podchaser.
Yeah. Acast, if you haven't heard, Acast basically acquired Podchaser, which is Podchaser. If you don't know what Podchaser is what I would call the IMDb equivalent of podcasting. So they're an aggregator of podcast data, right? And they've been actively trying to do that for many years, and they have partnerships with podcast platforms gathering data about podcasters, and to have one platform acquire that does kind of put things in a question mark, right? Around access to that information, which we were hoping that Podchaser was going to be an independent, kind of depository.
They're claiming they're going to be operating independently, but let's be frank. If Acast spent $34 million, that's the rumor. That's
a lot of money.
That's a lot of money. They're going to want something for that investment, and they admittedly within their press release said they were not profitable this year. They hope to obtain profitability next year, but $34 million for what? And that what is data? And I'm just going to call a spade a spade. Already been public on Twitter.
Well, what data, Todd, let's
Well-
be clear what's at risk here.
I'll make my statement, then you can talk about the data. I believe Acast is undeserving of this information that Podchaser has. They have bought it, so they are now default going to have access to this. I don't have a good, Acast says they've stopped spamming, but I think, why did they stop spamming? Maybe they knew they were buying Podchaser and were trying to do a little PR. I'm just calling spade a spade. I think they're just, preparing their PR team because they knew they were going to make this acquisition and had to clean things up a little bit. That's my conspiracy. So that's Todd speaking. But it's here you've got now Chartable, Podsites, Podchaser. Podsites and Chartable are owned by Spotify. They control that data. And then you have now Podchaser owned by Acast. They have access to all the data. So why don't you talk about the data, Rob? What data did they get?
Well, they've been trying to aggregate traffic data, like how popular a podcast is. They've been trying to access data around hosts and co-hosts and trying to aggregate all of the podcasts and then have all this analytics and demographics and all sorts of stuff about the podcast space to be able to create a central point of access to all things about podcasting. And it is unfortunate that one hosting platform acquired that, because I think what it's going to cause is like a reaction that you had to it, Todd, is that you're going to pull all your information out of it.
I'm going to pull my personal shows. Every podcaster's got.
Yeah, but you're not speaking for Blueberry.
No,
right?
no, I'm speaking for me,
your own shows.
My personal shows, right? I'm not speaking for Blueberry.
Right. And I'm not speaking for Libsyn. Libsyn's going to take any reaction specific to this either.
Right.
But we also didn't get into any kind of an integration deal with them either.
Neither did we. Well, we have the ability for podcasters to submit their shows over there.
Right.
So I'm probably going to leave that alone at this point. And don't get me wrong, I love the Podchaser team. Okay.
Yeah.
So the Podchaser guys, don't take this the wrong way. We and ladies, we love your team. You guys
has been on this show.
Yeah. And
talking to us. Right.
But I just was, I don't say this very often. I was disappointed that they went to Acast. So I wasn't going to buy them. So it's not a jealousy thing at all. But, when the data starts being consolidated like this, and I think podcasters need to really think about what is the value of the data of your show. What is that actually valuable to you? And if it is, and if you're getting value being on Podchaser, great. If you're getting exposure, if you're getting ad deals, whatever it may be, more power to you. But what is the value of the data that is being given away? And again, I'm in the data business, but I don't sell data, and I never have. I never will. So now, if I get bought, then it's a game changer too, right?
Right. Dan, what's your thought on it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm wondering, like, from both of you all, and full disclosure, they're both partners of ours and have been longtime partners and partners to us as Podcast Movement. Are you guys seeing a bigger issue with just the fact that a hosting company in general acquired Podchaser, or is it the actions of Acast recently that happened to be the hosting company that acquired them, or some combination of the two?
Well, I think for me, it's a combination of the two.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely the combination of the two, Dan. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's definitely consolidation, and it's like you said, similar to the Chartable and the pod sites going to Spotify. I mean, I don't know. I also see it from the business owner standpoint.
Me too.
They had that they're
it was a good acquisition.
I don't know if it was a public raise. So anytime you see an acquisition happen, you're not quite sure what how much money's been put into it either. So how many of those 7 or 8 figures actually go out to anyone whose name we know versus who go to
I hope a lot. I hope a lot of that. I hope a lot went to them. You know,
Yeah, I mean,
and
we've been working with them since 2017 or so when they really got the idea started. And I don't know if you all remember, but there were several different companies that came along trying to do this IMDb of podcasting.
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones that Head and Shoulders kind of won out, especially now with the the acquisition price. But I still think conceptually it's a value add for the space. It's just a matter of, like you said, what's kind of happening behind the scenes and what does that mean. Like if you are pulling your shows off and people pull their shows off, does that diminish the value of it as a platform from a user perspective?
I think the majority, probably 99% of podcasters won't. They don't care.
Yeah.
And, so, and I wouldn't pull this show off unless Rob agreed to it. So I'm just going to pull my personal show off and probably Blueberry show off. But this show will remain if Rob agrees it should remain. I'm not going to make that decision. Mm-hmm. But I just think based upon the tactics that they have used, they're going to use this data, in my opinion, my personal opinion, they're going to use this data to target my customers. And that worries me, because now they're going to have real detailed data and they're going to be able to tragically go and cherry pick. And probably maybe good for those shows. I don't know. But I guess I have to step my game up and make sure those shows are satisfied with what we're providing. So, don't get me wrong. You have to continue to deliver value to your customers. But, yeah.
Yeah, and I think this is a trend, a continuing trend that we're seeing in the industry. And I'm trying to take the conversation up to 30,000-foot view. But it's the consolidation and the verticalization of this podcasting medium is being driven by economic interests and growing opportunities to capture larger and larger market shares, right? So in the early days of this medium, there wasn't companies battling like this.
Right.
But clearly we're in a new phase. The projection with the IAB is this is a $2 billion industry going to be in the next couple of years. And so there's a lot of economic interest that is driving this. And that's going to cause these type of mergers to happen. And also, it's also a reflection, I guess, of the broader industry not supporting an IMDb of podcasting as much as we probably as an industry maybe should have to keep them independent.
Right.
So I think there is some bearing of responsibility that the industry has overall that basically enabled this outcome to occur. Yeah.
And I think too is that it's not like the data that they have is not replicatable.
Right.
So it's, a lot of the data, the hard part on this was the guest piece, who were the guests on which shows and that interaction. A lot of that was hand curated. They had teams that were validating, that Joe Rogan had this guest, and a lot of that was not done automatically. I think they were working towards that, but a lot of that was hand curated. So that's the hard part of that data.
Those users, you could create an account and add yourself to other shows, or other shows could add you.
Right. So that piece might be replicatable. And to be honest with you, some of that data that they pulled is available via API. Some of the Apple API data, you can pull that yourself. You just got to be willing to, run the spreadsheet and then, put that in a query and put it on a website. So it's not all of that is that difficult to replicate. The question is for me was, as a podcast host, what was going to be valuable for my content creators? What was I going to do what from them would help them grow their shows? And, we built some of those pieces ourselves internally that we thought, and it was not necessarily driven from them, but it was stuff that we thought what's going to be valuable to the podcaster to know. And I think that that's what we'll probably all be looking at now is, what additional things can we add in our own decks to give the podcaster the information so that they wouldn't necessarily have to give this data up to somebody else. Yeah,
Todd, and I think one other thing to think about too is if another company in the space did this acquisition, not Acast, but let's say Lipson or Blueberry or Podbean or whatever, would we feel different about it?
That was my question earlier, right? Like, is it just
Yeah.
who or is it the what?
Yeah, it's probably 50-50. Yeah, 50% the who. And we know companies are going to get bought and consolidated. That happens all the time. But,
Yep.
Acast has just not had a great, in my opinion, they have been big poachers. So, and went about it and by spamming,
So it's trust and
trust is a big part of it.
a history of certain types of behavior that is driving this kind of rejection of this acquisition, right?
And I've had a lot of comments that have come in privately to me that people are like, well, biggest question is why? Why did they spend that much money for that? And again, I guess people don't fully realize and again, I don't know if that number's been confirmed, but if 34 million is the number.
I also heard that 27 million has been thrown around too.
If that's that's a big number.
Yeah.
And, why? That was the question I was asked a lot. And it's, it's definitely not revenue driven. It's data driven. So that data that they have, that Acast is feeling that they're going to be able to, because Acast, if they're spending, let's say they spend 30 million, they're going to expect to get 1.2 out of that.
Well, we have to remember that
Or 120.
is the new,
data's the new.
It's the new currency, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's money combined with data. I mean, what built Facebook into a multi-billion-dollar company? It's not
the data.
their user interface. It's the data that they get out of it.
And then again, it goes back to this IAB stuff. It goes back to the discussion about privacy, and I don't necessarily think that they have that much listener data. Matter of fact, I don't think they have that much. I guess I'd have to go back and look at the product offering. So it's more about insights than anything else. So it's insightful data about shows.
Yeah, clues about shows. Because one thing that's missing from the podcasting space more broadly is a perspective of how big a particular podcast is, right? How many downloads they have, essentially, if you want to sum it down. There's really no public way for anybody to see that, generally, to make business evaluations about a particular podcast. So if this platform has that ability, that does give a leg up to an Acast to be able to see the success metrics of a particular podcast. I think probably not all podcasts, but a certain chunk of them, to be able to know how to pitch them, right?
And another thing too is, we were, I'm not, we've already talked about it on this show, but it was one of the reasons why we gave all our podcasters media kits, is because exactly what Rob just said, most podcasters can't afford to have a profile about their show and what it's actually doing. The difference between our data and what they're getting, it's actual user, it's real metric data. It's not extrapolated data. It's the real data. So from that instance, for our content creators, we feel it's valuable for them and whoever they want to share that to. And we've had a lot. I mean, it's been explosive, the number of folks that have created this media kit to be able to share with potential guests and so forth. Because what were they doing before? They're probably sending them over to Podchaser or another location. And again, we launched the media kit before this acquisition went down, but it really was along the same idea, was to be able to give that content creator the ability to show off his show to a potential guest or advertiser, whatever it may be, or a sponsor, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting move for sure.
So Dan, is there any last comment that you want to make about podcast movement, about something unique or something different that we haven't talked about yet? Anything that you can think of?
I mean, if you want to talk to Podchaser and Acast in person, that's the next place you'll be able to see them both.
There you go.
I think they're on separate sides of the expo hall, so you can talk to them in private, so to speak. No, but I just think, like I said, excited to have the whole industry coming together. As case in point, the two things being discussed, they're both going to be there. But yeah, super excited for that. And on the Podchaser thing, I do hope what they say and that they're going to operate independently. Like, I hope that's true, because I do think what Podchaser is doing, at least from a user standpoint, like, I don't know as much about the data standpoint, but from the user standpoint, it is unique, and it does seem like it's a value add for independent podcasters to be able to, kind of build out that profile and build their show history and have, detailed information about their show and all of that. So I do think it's a value add, and I do hope that they kind of continue with that mission, potentially with some more, good firepower to build on that and evolve on that. So that's my closing thought there. But yeah,
I'm not going to do anything different with Podchaser myself. I mean, I have a profile up there, and all the podcasts that I've ever been on is indexed in there. So I'm not going to try and pull myself out of there or anything like that. So
I guess
I'm supportive of it.
I'm just the old curmudgeon in here.
Well,
I think it's
not speaking for Lipson. And
I know. I think it's more, and for me, it's more of a, and maybe I'm just looking at it wrong. Maybe I should just get over it, So, but it is maybe it is 75% who bought them, because I love the
Todd,
Podchaser team.
Your role is to bring an alarm to something, right? And to have people look at it and objectively make that decision for themselves.
Right.
And I think that's always constructive.
Yeah. And it may come across a little harsh, but again, to the Podchaser team, I know you're listening, we still love you love the team.
Yeah. Right.
But, so anyway, I was, to be honest with you, I was shocked. I was like, really?
Yeah. And to be fair too, there's a lot of terrific people over at Acast too. So I know that they've been on a rapid hiring spree all across the world. And I know that I came across them a lot on my trip to Europe and to the podcast show, and they have a pretty strong presence outside of the U.S. as well. But I do know that they have their eyes set on getting more market share in the U.S. too. So, yeah.
It's 29 to $34 million worth. That's for sure.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
So, and they got the money to spend that too. That's a telltale sign too. How well they're doing.
Yep. Well, they are a public company.
Oh, that is true. Over there, right? They're on.
No, I think it's on. I thought they're on the New York Stock Exchange. I thought.
Yeah, I don't remember where they're at from a listing standpoint. I thought, I'll have to look at that. Well, anything else that has come up this past, we got about 5 minutes. Anything else has come up this week that is, did you guys see, speaking of spam, did you see Cridland's spam report?
Oh, yeah, I did see that.
Yeah. So since May, the biggest spammer was, let's see if I can find the link to it.
And Acast wasn't on the list.
No, they weren't.
Right. So
let's see if I can find it. Some company that I really wasn't too familiar with here. Let me get it. I've got it right there. Let me link. It was it's the wrong one because I'm looking at the report. Let me go back. See if I can grab it here.
Yeah, I was looking at it too. I believe yesterday, but I can't remember the name of the company.
It's called Backtracks. Backtracks. And I have gotten a huge amount of email from them as well, but I think they're a stats company too, right?
I don't know. I'm not sure what they do. Are they music? Maybe?
No. Let me Google them here and what do they do? It's a podcast analytics and advertising software platform.
Oh, interesting.
I'd also be able to run into them and chat with them at Podcast Movement.
Oh, really?
They're
going to be there too?
Wow.
Dan's being very, very quiet here.
Don't believe they're there in a sponsorship capacity, but I do know that team will be represented.
Got it.
Podvine as well, and Good Pods, and on Podium. Not Good Pods. Podvine wasn't too much, but I
believe Good Pods is actually probably the closest thing to Podchaser. I believe I saw them tweeting at people that were concerned with the Podchaser news, Good Pods was hopping in there, kind of pitching themselves as an alternative.
Yeah, there was. Someone was pitching me, and I'm like, I don't need metrics, thanks. I got my own.
Yeah, I always thought that the Good Pods folks was more of a listening platform.
Yeah, I thought it was an app.
But right, well, it is.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, it is, and it's I believe like you can, like, I want to say, well, because it's like Goodreads, which is like the book version. That's what it's based on.
Right.
Kind of put together your reading list or your listening list.
And the last one on the bad boy list, at least according to Pod News, is On Podium. Was the next one that was sent. So I've seen emails from Backtracks. I don't think I've gotten any from Podvine. I have seen stuff in the past from Good Pods, but I think that's the only. But I didn't get the level of spam that James did from Backtracks.
Well, I believe
James,
he mentioned he's got some kind of thing that he's running in the background to actually attract some of that, to kind of put the email. I forget the exact term, but something to where
he's got a honeypot running, so he can capture this stuff. But yeah, he also said that his research came up showing that spam technically is not illegal.
Okay, but
that's what he said in the article.
But no one's gotten a fine for spam. And when's the last time you heard anybody getting a fine for spam? It just doesn't happen. So
yeah, because I mean, more and more of those newsletter type platforms are basically aggressively implementing opt-out capabilities, right?
Yeah, and if you run, if you send me an email once and I don't like you and I delete it, and you send me one twice, and as long as I can unsubscribe, I'm not going to hammer you. If I can unsubscribe and get off your list permanently, then I'm good. But it's when I unsubscribe and keep getting hit, that's when I get irritated. So.
Yeah, because the history of that is some of those platforms use that unsubscribe as a confirmation of an active email account.
Right.
So it can be twisted into something that benefits them, not takes you out of the list.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's make sure I'm not going to jack ourselves up here. Okay. Okay, I'm good. All right, so we're already at 90 minutes. And hey, thanks for everyone who was watching. If you didn't check in on Facebook, make sure you do before we bounce out. If you like our new video format and how we've done this, let us know. And if you're listening to the audio podcast, we'd love to hear your feedback on today's show. I'm sure we'll get a little bit of it. Someone's going to have good or bad things to say, that's for sure. But Dan, we look forward to seeing you in a few short weeks, just about a month away. Yeah,
look forward to seeing you both and everyone else who's able to make it.
But it's been our pleasure to bring you the show. Dan, how can they reach out to you?
Dan at podcastmovement.com, easy to get a hold of. And I've been accused of sometimes replying too slow and sometimes replying too fast. So it's a grab bag of which one of those two you'll get.
Is it possible to reply too fast? I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, the hand in or the phone in the hand culture sometimes gets the best.
That's right.
Yeah. Fully understand that. Was getting hit at 11 p.m. last night by someone. Your support team is not responding to me, and I'm like, it's 11 p.m.
Sometimes those emails get the fastest replies.
That's true. But I'm Todd at bluebear.com, at Geek News on Twitter. Rob?
I'm on Twitter as well, at Rob Greenlee, and I can be reached via email as well, robg@libsyn.com. And I do have a website, robgreenlee.com, and we'll be back with the show next week.
I appreciate everyone being here. Thanks for your ongoing support. Thanks for the boost, those of you that boosted us. And if you don't know what a boost is, go over to Podcast 2.0 and check it out and get your show boosted as well and get a few Satoshis in your wallet. Everyone, take care. We'll see you next time here on the New Me Show. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh, that didn't work. I was supposed to put a logo up there. You guys are seeing a black screen, so is everybody else.
Yes, we are. Yeah.
Oh, what was that?
So we off, Todd?
Almost.